Hi everyone, my name is Julie. Thank you so much for watching. Today I'm going to be discussing some of my first instinctual things as I came back to the United States. You guys know I used to live in Germany for 3.5 years. I've now moved back to the States, and there's been just some visceral responses that I thought I should talk to you guys about and see as Americans if you find these weird or if you find these normal, and if you are European/German, maybe you might find these things. You might agree with me if you've been to the United States, or you might disagree with me about things I'm going to say about living in Europe. So first and foremost, in Germany, I lived in Bavaria. I lived in a very rural part of Bavaria, just outside of Nuremberg. And so I was able to travel by train into Nuremberg, but I didn't do that very often, just to, maybe do some shopping, pick up a few things here and there, but mostly I lived on the outskirts, in a rural small town. Here, I live in Tennessee near Nashville, and I live in what's known as a small city, and I think that some of the things I'm going to mention are going to be playing off the part of I'm not living in a super rural area anymore. However, if I go 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, I will be in rural areas again. So just something to keep in mind as I mention this, and some that will play a role into what I'm about to say, because I did move to a much greater urban area, even though I'm not living in downtown Nashville, it's similar. Because the first thing I want to mention is urban sprawl. I never realized how suburban some towns in America are. And I feel like the town I'm in, yes, there's a historic center, but really 99% of the town is urban sprawl. And this town is particularly growing fast because of the region I live in. It's all these subdivisions of houses, and it's not urban, it's not rural, it's suburban. And I find that really, really fascinating. In Germany, at least in Bavaria where I lived, again, I did not live in Nuremberg, but in the town I lived, you had the town center, which is the historic town center. And then, yes, you had one community off to the side, but really other than that were farms. So everyone kind of lived in the central location, and then they would travel out to their farm fields to work. Well, here, it's everyone lives outside the city, but then drives into the city to work, or drives into a manufacturing center to work. It's a different thought process of do you live in the town, or do you live outside the town and go into the town to work? I'm sure some anthropologists have studied this, so leave them down below if you know of a good article or something about how American suburban sprawl is different from European. Because after World War II, that's when the United States really started this urban sprawl. The suburbs kind of became a main thing, and the same thing didn't happen in Europe. And I don't know if it's because of the economic differences of the history of that, but whatever. Let me know. Leave me fun facts down below. Along with living now in suburbia, strip malls are such a huge thing in my town. A huge thing. It's almost embarrassingly popular or important to my town to have strip malls. It is everywhere. There's no other way to shop other than in a strip mall. There's no other options. It is strip mall this, strip mall that, strip mall this, strip mall that. Oh, what strip mall are you in? People know their strip malls. They know the areas. There's one main street, and I swear it's 6 miles just of strip malls, various strip malls, which is a little bit ridiculous, but also very interesting because Germany, yes, Germany has strip malls, but it's very, very limited. A town would have a strip mall area. I feel, at least my town, just had one strip mall area, and that's where you might be able to drive up right to a store. When I lived in Germany, you had your historic town center, which had normal shopping in it. You had H&M, you had a bakery, you had a cafe where you could eat. You had kind of the standard New Yorker stores, bookstore maybe, in your town center. Here, there's not the same type of town center, so everything has to go out, especially in terms of shopping. And strip malls just seem to be where Americans are going because they're easy to drive to, they're easy to park in front of, and you can just find it really easily because they have these big signs in front of it. And you just kind of pull up and you walk in and you're good to go. And I feel while Germany is starting to get more and more strip malls, it's kind of not as in your face, because you still have your Old Town Center, which has basically everything you need, quote unquote, to shop for. And then they do have strip malls on the outside for shopping, but it just feels so different here. And a lot of times those strip malls would be like in an L shape, so you kind of park in and you can kind of go to multiple stores. When here it's like you go to one, and the stores are so big here. The stores are massive. I went to Hobby Lobby. I forgot how big Hobby Lobby was. I almost got lost. It's like a warehouse. If you've never been to Hobby Lobby, it is a home decor place, because you can see I've got this great blank wall behind me and I gotta do something with it. I'm debating, like, would you want to see nail polish here again? I don't know, because you'd only get like a corner of it. I'm like, basically my back is to a wall, so I don't know. Do you want like art? What do you think back here? I went to Hobby Lobby and just kind of like looked at some options, because they have everything. They have like these little, it's really cute on their planograms. They have like these little like groupings of styles, which I think is really fun. Plus, the holidays are coming up, so they've got a great Thanksgiving section for Americans. American Thanksgiving is coming up. If you're Canadian, happy Thanksgiving. I know you already celebrated it. And then Christmas is coming up, so the holiday kind of decorations are out too. So we're kind of debating what to do back here. But going to Hobby Lobby was massive. I was honestly like overwhelmed with the number of choices. Like, if you think of that versus decor, Hobby Lobby is like 10 times this size. So even if you go like, what was it, Nanu Nanu? That is like, it's tiny in compared to some of these American stores. So I think that is really interesting. I went into Joann and Michael's and it's like, doesn't even compare. Like, just the selection of goods, I guess in particular in home goods and craft stores, I feel like are very different between the two countries as well. Along with the strip mall idea and urban planning, clearly Germany and Europe has a history of European culture that goes back further than the European culture in America. And so when it comes to urban planning, North America and Europe had very different styles before European contact to North America, right? So when we talk about cities, European cities are going to be significantly older in terms of urban planning than most. Most is a key term there. I do realize that some places like Mexico and places within the United States did have Native Americans living there with complex societies that created urban planning, but what I'm talking about is what we see today in urban planning. American urban planning, in particular, boosted after the World War II, which definitely is the town I lived in, is going to be significantly different than like medieval city planning in Europe, right? So one thing that I really noticed are the wide roads here. This town that I live in definitely had carriages at some point. It was around during the Civil War. There was a Civil War fort here. However, the roads are no longer carriage-sized roads that a lot of medieval towns in Germany can't get away from, because they built their buildings right there next to the road. But what Americans have done is just expanded these roads super wide. Like, there is just, like, the street with all the strip malls on it, it has 5 lanes. 5 lanes! Like, it's so large. So the middle one is a turning lane, and then you've got 2 coming each way. Oh my gosh, these roads are so big. I forgot how big a car could be in the United States after living in Germany for 3 years. I drove this tiny Peugeot 206. It's like barely a sedan. Like, no grown adult can sit in the back. And now I have a small SUV, and I'm like, my car is so big. When am I ever going to need all this space? But every car is the size of mine or larger. Yeah, there's still some sedans here in the United States, but I feel like we're all moving to SUVs. If you disagree with me on that statement, leave it down below. At least in my area, you're going to get a lot of trucks. You're going to get a lot of huge SUVs. You're going to get a lot of small SUVs. Yes, you still get some sedans, but I feel like they are the minority now out there, especially with car shopping. If you are an auto salesperson, let me know if you agree with me or not on that. I'd be intrigued on your opinion. What is selling better for you, SUVs, sedans, or trucks? I know there also might be regional differences. So if you live in Tennessee, that would be most ideal. Or Kentucky. I'll take Kentucky too, that's pretty close. Along with urban planning, there are no castles nearby. And it's such a bummer. In terms of like the history of this region, I am past the Appalachian Mountains, which means this area was not settled by Europeans. Now, there were Native Americans in this area, but there were no Europeans in this area until after 1797. So that's really important to know because there are no castles. Yes, Native Americans lived here. They did not build castles in the style that we're used to seeing in Europe. There was not the stonework for building in this area that they had there. So that's like one of the big bummer. Like you don't just drive around and you look up a mountain and there's a castle ruin. Or like, oh, there's a castle you can go and visit. Or, oh, look, there's a medieval festival. Like the history is so different in this area. And I think that that is something I really miss about Germany. Like I really miss digging into history I didn't know a whole lot about. Here they really celebrate history starting from the Civil War to the present, because that's really the boom of this town that I live in. So that's important to know. I haven't seen too much about Native American history here. There is Native American history here in this area, but it's not a current focus on the exhibits that I have seen. That doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that it hasn't been a focus of my history yet. I mean, like I went to a Civil War fort, so yes, they're going to show some Native American projectile points, but they didn't really go into the history of who lived in this region because they were focusing on the Civil War. And I really kind of miss, like in my small town in Bavaria, you can go into the town center and there were houses built there in the 1700s. Like there are no houses that remained from the 1700s here in my area of Tennessee. Maybe if you go further east there's some, like maybe closer to the Appalachian Mountains over there, but definitely not here. I'm trying to think of the oldest. I know that there's an 1800 homestead, so that might be the oldest building I know. And that's like a log cabin style house, but it's just different, right? You think of how people were living here on what was, you know, the frontier of, I guess, because we're talking after 1797, what is the newly United States of America versus Europe, which, you know, the people were living so differently. Like the natural resources of North America were its boom, but the history and kind of the grandeur of Europe is its boom. So I think that's interesting. I know I'm talking in general, so please forgive me. If you're a historian, please don't come and bite my head off. I really am talking in generals because it's just what caught me off guard. Like when I first moved here, I was kind of looking around and I went to the local history center and I was just like, oh, we're gonna start like right before the Civil War. We're gonna start around like 1820s on this town. Like, interesting. Those are the early settlers running in the 1820s, and it's just kind of like, alright, I mean, cool. When I was used to going into, you know, places and seeing 1485 or, you know, on buildings, it'd be like 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, and you'd be like, oh, this is the second castle. It was built in 1812. And you're like, okay. Or the second castle would be built in like, you know, 1765. And you're like, alright, like, but the first wall was built here in 1000? Okay, welcome to the United States. History is just different. It's just different. I wish that I could tell you more about the Native Americans who lived in this area, the first people, but it's something I still need to learn about and research and learn. So it's something I'm excited to continue learning about, and I hope that I'll come back to at some point and be like, and Native Americans have been in this area, documented history for 10,000 years, which I'm not saying is not true, but I just don't know if it is true. I'm pretty sure people have been here for a very long time. This is a very rich country in terms of farming. There's a great river nearby, so it's definitely a great place to live. There's lots of natural resources, so I'm sure first people definitely were in and out of this area if they didn't just live here permanently. I don't know if we're talking like a hunter-gatherer community or if it was an agrarian society, so it's something I still need to learn about. And last, if you remember the video of when I filmed what I'm going to miss most about Germany, is one thing that I mentioned was the bread. Okay, you guys, I went to a German bakery in town, and they had really good pumpkin seed rolls, and I was like, yes, a good German bakery, I'm here for it, I'm living for it. And then I tried one of their loaves of bread. It just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same. I tried the whole wheat, and the crust was so soft. And I even went back for a second time, I'm like, give me the crustiest bread you have, and it was like, man. And so then I went to another local bakery, I tried that bread. And I'm not saying these breads weren't good, because yes, they were delicious. You know, they were soft and they were pillowy, and, you know, the rye had that little bitter rye taste to it, and the pumpernickel was good and the wheat bread had all these seeds in it, but it just wasn't German bread. It didn't have the same scent, didn't have the same texture on the sandwich making side of it. It just wasn't the same. And I miss it. And I'm going to continue searching every grocery store, every bakery in this area until I find the best bread. I don't even care if it's $10 a loaf. I'm going for it because I miss bread so much. But I am glad I found that German bakery because their pumpkin seed rolls are amazing. And I'm definitely going to be a very steady customer of theirs for those seed rolls. But I don't know, it's just not the same. And I need to eat at that bakery too. Like they serve like schnitzel and bratwurst and things like that. So I need to test it out, see if it's really similar or if it's not similar, and see how it goes. They did have smoked cheese, which was fine. I've had better, but I just don't know if I chose the right one there. But I'm excited to see and explore. There does seem to be some German descendants in this part of Tennessee, so there is this like German subculture around here, which is interesting to see after coming from Germany. So, and there are some Germans, like people who were born in Germany, currently live here because it is, you know, outside a major urban area in the United States. So it's kind of nice to see that community as well. I saw a Dindle on Facebook the other day for sale, and I was just like, what? How crazy is that? I just thought that was really amusing. But thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you have lived in Europe, what were your expectations of America when you moved back, and what were some of the things that surprised you as well. I am very glad to be living back in the United States. Like, I got to see my parents again and hang out with them. I got to see my siblings. It's just kind of nice to be back in the culture in which you were raised. It just feels like home here, and I do really like it. But these were just some things that, like, in the first month I was kind of like, oh yeah, that is different, isn't it? Like, just some things to kind of like, it's not shock at all, but just a few things that made my mind go, oh yeah, I remember this. Because in Europe I remember this being strange, and now I'm back in the United States and it's normal again. So thank you so much for watching. I so look forward to your comments down below. I'm hoping I didn't sound horrible in this. I realize it's just my opinion. Please feel free to disagree with me. Do it in a respectful manner. It's just my opinion. It's just one person's viewpoint. I do love the United States and I love Germany, and I'm sad that I left Germany, but I am really excited to be back in the United States. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in my next video.